I spent most of my life struggling with my weight, food noise, and cravings. During COVID, I reached 338 pounds. Last year in 2025, I got down to 185 pounds, which was the lowest weight I've ever been as an adult. But honestly, this story started long before I ever stepped on a scale at 338 pounds. It really started when I was 16 and my mom died from coronary heart disease. I want to be careful with how I talk about this because I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I was 16, I lost my mom, and immediately became some type of health expert who completely changed his life overnight. Because that's just not what happened. I was 16. I don't think I fully understood what had happened or how much it was going to affect me. But when you lose a parent that young, it leaves questions behind. And as I got older, I started thinking more and more about my own health and longevity, and started asking questions like, why do our bodies decline? Why do some people seem to stay strong and healthy for decades while others just don't? How much of our future can we actually control? How much does nutrition matter? How much does exercise matter? Like, these are questions that I just wanted answers to. What about supplements? What about our genetics? What are the things that we can change and what can't we change? And I want to make something very clear. I'm not saying that my mom's death was preventable. I'm not making that's not the claim that I'm trying to make here. I'm just telling you what her death has done to me over my lifetime. It planted questions in my mind that over time became a genuine obsession with health, nutrition, performance, and now eventually becoming longevity. The problem is that health matters and actually changing your own life are two very different things, because for most of my life I've struggled with maintaining a healthy body weight. I've struggled with food, I've struggled with cravings, I struggled with what people today refer to as food noise, that constant mental chatter about eating, wanting something, thinking about your next meal, the next snack, the next craving, like just constantly. And unless you've actually dealt with it, you probably won't understand what I'm referring to. There were times in my own life where I would lose weight, I would regain it back, I would try again, I would lose some, I'd regain it. And I think a lot of people watching this or that see this will probably know exactly what that cycle feels like. You just feel trapped. You tell yourself that Monday is going to be different, next month is going to be different. After the holidays, things will be different. After this stressful period at work, you'll finally be able to focus on improving yourself, your health. And then you look up and months or years have gone by and you're still, kind of stuck. For me, COVID was probably the worst point. I was living in Michigan at the time, where I'm from. The governor shut everything down except for like fast food and groceries. And I got up to 338 pounds, 338 pounds. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I was obese. I was morbidly obese. I was not slightly overweight. I was not carrying a few extra pounds. I was obese. And eventually, I just had to accept the reality that nobody was coming to save me. Like, nobody. And I know that phrase can sound, kind of harsh or overly harsh, and that nobody is coming to save you. But I actually think that it's one of the most empowering things that people can actually realize. You just have to accept it. Because if you're sitting around waiting for the perfect time or the perfect motivation or the perfect circumstances, or some other person to come into your life and force you to change, you're probably going to be waiting forever. At some point, you have to take action, not because it's easy, not because you suddenly become perfectly disciplined, not because all of your cravings just suddenly or magically disappear, but because at some point, staying where you are becomes more painful than actually starting to make the changes. And for me, that process eventually took me from 338 pounds back in late 2020 down to 185.8 pounds last year in 2025. That's the lowest weight I've ever been as an adult. And that's more than 150 pounds from my heaviest to my lowest. But losing weight didn't suddenly make me a perfect human being. I still struggle with things. I still have my weaknesses. I still make mistakes all the time. I still have to manage my own behavior. I still have to make decisions every single day. This isn't going to be one of these channels where I sit in front of a camera and pretend that I figured out some secret to life and hacks, and just everyone else just isn't trying hard enough. Like that's all just bullshit. I've heard that stuff the same. I'm sure you guys have heard it too. People generally struggle for a few real reasons. Food noise is a real thing. Cravings are extremely a real thing. Stress is a real thing. Depression, unfortunately, is a real thing. Your environment does matter. Your genetics do matter. Your circumstances do matter. But here's also what I believe: those things can be real and you can still take action. Both of those things can be true simultaneously. You don't have to pretend that something is easy in order to do something about it. Over time, my own transformation pushed me even farther down the rabbit hole. At first, like a lot of people, I wanted to lose weight and just look better and feel better about myself. And that's just the simple truth. But eventually, the rabbit hole got much deeper than just the vanity level. And I became obsessed with nutrition. I'm obsessed with training, obsessed with supplements, obsessed with, health, performance, cognition, strength, aging. And now lately it's longevity. I just turned 40, and not just living longer, but staying capable longer, staying physically strong, being physically active for a longest period of time possible, staying mentally sharp, being able to do the things that matter to you for as long as you possibly can. And that's what ultimately where a lot of the thinking behind intellect has started. Now here's something else about me that probably makes my background a little unusual for someone starting a supplement company. I still work a full time day job. I am an industrial hygienist. And unless you work in occupational health and safety, there's a very good chance you have no idea what that means, that job title. But basically, my job is focused on protecting workers from environmental and occupational health hazards. Um, I deal with things like chemical exposures, air sampling, dust, metals, silica, leads, VOCs, and other potential workplace hazards. Essentially, I go out in the field, I collect data, I evaluate exposures, I compare results against regulatory standards and guidelines. We have to look at the doses, we have to look at the risks, I have to look at evidence, and I have to try to determine whether an actual hazard exists and what should be done about it to protect those employees. Um, Now, I want to make something also very clear. Being an industrial hygienist does not make me anything like a doctor. It doesn't make me a dietitian. It doesn't make me a pharmacologist. And it doesn't magically make me an expert on everything supplement or every supplement ingredient in existence. But it absolutely shaped the way that I think and how I approach our supplement brand. My professional life revolves around asking certain questions. What's actually there? How much is there? How are people actually being exposed? What does the evidence actually show? Is this actually a meaningful risk, or are we just assuming it is? So when I started going deeper and deeper into supplements, I found myself asking a lot of the same questions or similar questions, like what's actually in this product? How much is in this product? Is the dose meaningful in this product? Why did this company choose this amount for this product? Is this ingredient here because the evidence supports it or because it looks good on the label? Is it a trademark patented ingredient? Is there enough information for the consumer to actually make an informed decision, or is it all just marketing BS? And the deeper I went, the more I realized something. A great looking label and a great formula are not the same thing. A famous brand and a great formula are not the same thing. A celebrity endorsement and a great formula are definitely not the same thing. And simply putting an ingredient on a supplement facts panel does not automatically mean there's enough of it to actually matter. Now, I don't want to become the guy who sits here and says the entire supplement industry is a scam because that's just simply not true. There are companies that make some really good products out there. There are some smart formulators doing incredible work behind the scenes. There are brands that I have a great amount of respect for. Um, there are products from other companies that I would absolutely use myself. But there's also just an overwhelmingly ton of bullshit. There's label decoration everywhere. There's underdosing going on all the freaking time. There's marketing designed to make the average consumer think they're getting much more than they actually are. There's so much hype in the industry. There's so much celebrity marketing. There's prop blends that tell you almost nothing about what's actually in the supplement. There's the newest trendy ingredient being thrown into a formula just because people recognize the name. And eventually, I reached a point where I thought, what would I build? If I could create the kind of supplement company that I actually wanted to buy from, what would it look like? What would the formulas look like? How transparent would we be? What would we prioritize? And that's eventually what became Intellekt. Intellekt is my supplement company, and we're not some massive corporation pretending to be a small, scrappy startup because it just makes for better marketing. We actually are a small company. At this time, it's literally just me wearing all the hats. I still work full time as an industrial hygienist. I build Intellekt around my day job. I get all of my training around my day job. And we have one retailer right now. And yeah, I'm counting that as a win because when you're building something from nothing, one retailer absolutely matters. That helps tremendously. One customer matters. One person who comes back and orders again matters. One message that I get from someone telling me how much they loved our product, that matters. That's what building something looks like at the beginning. And I'm not going to pretend I've done everything perfectly. I've made plenty of mistakes throughout this process. I've made lots and lots of mistakes so far. I've changed my mind on numerous projects. I've changed multiple different products. I've discontinued products. I've looked back at some of these decisions and realized I would do a lot of them completely differently today. Our formulas are evolving, our branding is evolving, our company is evolving. And I actually want to show you guys how that process unfolds behind the scenes because I'm tired of the fake entrepreneur content where someone acts like, one day everything just kind of clicked, perfect clarity. Every decision was just boom, right on the money. They launched some company and then became, a super wealthy, successful brand overnight because that's just not reality. At least this hasn't been my reality. My reality is working a full time job and then working on Intellekt when I can, between jobs. It's getting a manufacturing quote, realizing an ingredient I really want to use, but it might destroy our margins. It's creating a product that I believe in and realizing nobody even knows it exists, and that's on me. It's sending products to creators and then sometimes getting absolutely no content back. Nothing is, they just free sample vultures. It's trying content that gets no views. It's making decisions with incomplete information. It's getting something wrong and then changing it and making things right. It's one retailer, it's one order, it's one repeat customer, it's one step at a time. And that's what this channel is going to be about. Yes, we're going to talk about supplements because that's the industry in which we exist, but we're also going to break down formulas, ours, our competitors. We're going to talk about ingredients. We're going to talk about clinical dosing and too common underdosing. We're going to talk about prop blends. We're going to talk about what supplement labels actually tell you and what they don't tell you or what they try to avoid telling you. We're going to talk about why certain products are formulated the way they are, at least the way I believe they are formulated the way that they are. We're going to talk about what it actually costs to make premium supplements. We're going to talk about the compromises that brands sometimes have to make between a quality formula, the flavor, the serving sizes, the price, the retail margins, manufacturing, and what customers will actually go into a store and buy. And yes, sometimes we're going to break down our own products as well. When we do that, I'll tell you exactly what they are, who they're for, why we formulated them the way that we did, and just as importantly, who should probably not use them, because not all of our supplements are for everybody. But this channel is not going to be one long commercial for Intellekt. I'm not going to just sit here and tell you that every supplement company except ours is complete garbage. That would just be completely dishonest. There are some great brands out there. There are a lot of great products out there. Um, there are products from other companies that might be a better fit for you than some of the products that we offer. And if I believe that, I will definitely say it. Because my goal with this channel is bigger than trying to sell you just a tub of pre workout. The ultimate goal is to make you a harder consumer to fool. I want you guys to be able to pick up a supplement, look at the label, and just ask yourself better questions. I want you guys to understand why the dosages matter, why the context matters, why more ingredients on a label don't automatically make it a better formula. Why the most expensive ingredient isn't necessarily the best ingredient in a formula. Um, why a supplement can be great for one person and completely wrong for another person. And beyond supplements, I want this channel to stand for taking action, because that's ultimately what intellect means to me. I don't believe that there's a supplement that's going to save you guys. Um, there's no powder, there's no pill, there's nothing that's just going to fix your entire life. There's no capsule, there's nothing that replaces effort. There is no pre-workout that can make you work out if you're unwilling to show up. There's no longevity supplement that replaces taking responsibility for the things you can control. Supplements are simply tools. That's it. Potentially useful tools, sometimes very useful tools, but still just tools. And I believe one of the most dangerous things we can do is spend our entire lives waiting until Monday, waiting until January, waiting until work becomes less stressful, waiting until we feel motivated, waiting until we have more money, waiting until life just gets easier, waiting for someone to come and save us. Nobody is coming. And again, I don't say that to be a downer. I say it because I think it's empowering. Because once you stop waiting to be rescued, you can start asking a much better question. What can I do today? Not what can I fix all at once, not how do I become perfect by tomorrow. What action can I take today? At one point, I weighed 338 pounds. Last year, I got all the way down to 185.8 pounds. Today, July 14th, 2026, I weigh 202 pounds. I lost more than 150 pounds from my heaviest weight to my lowest. And that transformation didn't happen because someone came and saved me. It happened through actions, not always perfect actions, not always linear progress, not every day being just a really good day, but just simply action. And intellect exists because I believe in that same philosophy. Think, question, learn, and then do something. You have to take action. And I'm still doing it myself. I'm still building. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to improve my own health and well being. I'm still trying to improve this company. I'm still working my full time job. I'm still trying to get more people to know that Intellekt exists. We're still small. We're still a small brand. We're still fighting. And honestly, that's why I think now is the right time to grow this channel here on YouTube. Not after we've already made it. Not or now while we're still building is the perfect time. While we're still making the decisions, while we're still making the silly mistakes that I'll look back on and just shake my head in the future. While the outcome is still uncertain, because I think that's a much more honest story. So when I was 16 years old and I lost my mom, I had no idea that her death would eventually lead me down this path. I didn't know it would change the questions I asked about health. I didn't know I would spend most of my life struggling with my own weight. I didn't know I would eventually reach 338 pounds. I didn't know I would eventually lose more than 150 of those pounds. I didn't know I'd become an industrial hygienist. Um, and I definitely didn't know I'd eventually start my own supplement company. But all of those things are part of who I am and why I'm here. They're part of why Intellekt even exists. And they're part of what this channel is going to be about. Supplements? Yes. Nutrition? Yes. Health? Yes. Performance? Yes. Strength? Yes. Cognition? Yes. Longevity? Yes. The supplement industry? And building a business from scratch, making mistakes, changing your mind when the evidence changes. And most importantly, taking action. That's what all this is about, is taking action, because nobody is coming to save you. And that means the next move is yours. My name is Jeff King. I'm the founder of Intellekt, and we are just getting started.